So, Aaron, have we ever seen such a major federal action in the history of the drug war?
Not really, actually. Since Nixon declared the war on drugs in 1971, we have not seen such a major federal push to undo the mechanisms of the drug war. Really, the last time we saw something like this was in 1978 and 79, when President Jimmy Carter tried to decriminalize marijuana at the federal level. Of course, he failed at that effort. Obama, through administrative action, essentially yesterday, did what Carter failed to do in 1978 and 1979. Of course, our prison population has grown 800% or something like that since 1980 when Carter was president. So this is a much more pressing problem for President Obama at this point. When I had a meeting with the White House following our victories in Washington and Colorado last November, they indicated to me at that time that they did not want to be preempting the state laws. They thought that it was politically risky, that it was legally risky. I had no idea, though, that the opinion would go as far as it did yesterday. It's really, truly remarkable.
So, I know a lot of people have been expressing some concerns. Can you tell us about the differences between this and the Ogden memo?
Sure, of course. The Ogden memo that was issued in October of 2009 said, with respect to the states that had implemented medical marijuana regulations, that if operators, medical marijuana dispensary operators in particular, were in clear and unambiguous compliance with state medical marijuana laws, that they would not be subject to the kind of federal scrutiny that they had been in the past. Of course, many in our community are skeptical of these claims, the current memo that was just released, because we did see an increase, actually, in enforcement activity on the part of the Department of Justice following that Ogden memo that many of us regarded as very positive back in October of 2009. This memo significantly departs from that. Number one, it actually says that one of the factors that they'll look at is diversion out of states that have allowed for recreational marijuana sales. Well, that's actually essentially what our federal alcohol laws do. Of course, the alcohol laws have a much more robust regulatory and tax structure that accompanies that regulation, that policy. But essentially, the federal government moved through administrative action to take the first step towards regulating marijuana like alcohol in this memo. It says that the priorities, the 8 priorities they'll follow, are going to be priorities regardless of state law. The language the memo uses, this memo says regardless of state law. So that's truly remarkable. We're talking about a policy that not just impacts Colorado and Washington, but impacts the entire country. And it's worth noting as well that one of the factors that the federal government has used to pursue medical marijuana dispensary owners and caregivers has been that they are too big. One of our great allies runs one of the best dispensaries in the world, Steve D'Angelo, with Harborside, has been persecuted by the federal government based on this idea that they were too big, specifically based on this idea that they were too big. This memo undoes that, so this is a big step forward.
That's great. So, where did they miss the mark with this memo?
Well, they missed the mark in a couple of ways. We have yet to see what they're going to do with banking regulations, with IRS regulations, with 280E tax issues. Right now, a lot of legitimate business owners have been hit with huge tax bills, and they've been kicked out of their banks because they're caught up in these technicalities that are intended to target multinational drug trafficking cartels. What they're instead doing, these money laundering regulations and banking regulations and our IRS regulations, are actually going after, they're using them to go after legitimate businesses. One of the things that this memo called for, the Department of Justice memo that was just released, was a transparent system of accounting and making sure that the revenue is accounted for. Well, the business operators cannot do that unless they have access to banking services like other legitimate businesses do. So that is a big question mark here. It's something that they need to address, and they need to address it immediately, because right now a lot of these legitimate businesses are running all cash operations, which is very, very dangerous. It's also worth noting that without changing the underlying law, the Controlled Substances Act, that's why the last paragraph of the memo is in there that says that this does not create a right or a defense in court. Until that underlying law, the Federal Controlled Substances Act, changes, the kind of prosecutorial guidance we see in this memo will have to contain those sorts of provisos. So that's obviously something that we want to see changed as well. But it's worth noting that the Obama administration went about as far as it could have possibly gone with administrative action in this regard. There's still some things they could do. like I said, with the banking, with the IRS regulations, and with a host of other things related to research in particular. But really, this was a huge, huge step forward.
So it's safe to say that this is a pretty historic announcement?
It is safe to say it's historic, and I've never seen anything like it in all of my 10 years professionally lobbying to legalize marijuana. I've never seen anything like it. It's such a wonderful victory. It feels so heartwarming to know that our students around the country made 18,000 calls to Colorado voters last fall. And we were instrumental in that victory in Colorado, running the Get Out the Vote campaigns on campuses. So I'm so proud that we were part of this, and I'm looking forward to see where we go from here.